Good afternoon. Welcome to Talks at Google. My name is Jordan Hyatt from the Google Automotive team, and I'm thrilled to have Heartbeat Opera here with us today. This is the first time we've ever hosted an opera troupe at Google NYC, and we're very excited about it. My partner and fellow Googler Peter Dolchin and I were introduced to Heartbeat just a few years ago. And even though we're not necessarily opera fans, we were blown away by the Heartbeat Opera team's creativity and passionate approach to bring opera to a whole new generation of people. Please give a warm welcome to the co-music director, Dan Schlossberg, and soprano Kelly Griffin for the first performance, an aria from Tosca.
My name is Jacob Ashworth. I am the other co-music director with Dan, and I wanted to introduce you to our next singer, Samarie Alicea, who will be doing a number from Rossini's The Barber of Seville. This is where Rosina has heard her lover outside the window, and she hears his voice, and she knows that she is going to be able to make him hers. I will make you mine, and I am going to be perfectly obedient, no worries, gentle, absolutely. She's a total firecracker, and if anybody is going to cross her, they will find out that she can also be quite a viper.
Poco fa, qui nel cor mi risuonò, il mio cor ferito è già, e l'indor fu che il piagò, sì l'indoro mio sarà, lo giurai, la vincerò, sì l'indoro mio sarà, lo giurai, la vincerò. Il tutor ricuserà, io l'ingegno aguzzerò, alla fin sacchetterò e contenti resterò. Sì, l'indoro mio sarà, lo giurai, lo vincerò. Sì, l'indoro mio sarà, lo giurai, la vincerò. Io sono docile, son rispettosa, sono obbediente, dolce e amorosa, mi lascio reggere, mi fa guidar, ma se mi toccano, ah, come mio demone, ah, sarò una vipera, sarò, e 100 travole, ah, prima di cedere, ah, farò giocar, e 100 travole, prima di cedere, farò giocar, e 100 trappole, prima di cedere, e 100 trappole, farò giocar, e 100 trappole, farò giocar, e 100 trappole, farò giocar,
I'm Peter Dolchin. While we set up the chairs, we're going to take you through a video of one of the performances that they had a couple of months ago in Brooklyn. It's a drag festive performance, so enjoy.
Ladies, gentlemen, and fabulous folk who transcend the gender binary, please rise for Her Royal Majesty, Regina Gloriana
accelerato perché son uomo e sento il fango originario in me. Bottom's dream, because it hath no bottom.
Oh, no, non può.
Geme,
I panni indosso della notte, perché disperata, anche spento dalla fossa, chi morì non sorse ancora, lo sorse ancora. Tonight, tonight, the world is full of light, with suns and moons all ablaze. Tonight, tonight, the world is wild and bright, growing mad, shooting sparks into space. Today, the world's just an address, a place for me to live, though that's good and alright. For here you are, and what was just a world is a star tonight.
If your girl is a Washington Heights dream, take the kid to a Midsummer Night's Dream.
If he then wants an all by himself night, let him rest every 11th or 12th night.
Because of your heat, he gets huffy. You just lay on and play on McDuffie.
Thank you. So I'm Peter Dolchin from the Global Partnerships team. Thank you again for taking the time to come out and experience and learn more about Heartbeat Opera. The talent on stage and behind the scenes are extremely impressive. They dedicate so much time, effort, and energy to this movement, and I'm really excited for us to learn more about who they are, how they've chosen this art. Many may say that it's chosen them, and what it's like to produce and perform in this more unconventional and emerging genre. So with that, I'd like to introduce, or have you introduce yourselves, so please state your name and what you do for Heartbeat Opera and anything else you want to briefly share.
Yeah, hi, I'm Louisa Proske. I'm the co-founder and co-artistic director of Heartbeat Opera, and I'm also a freelance director of opera and theater.
My name's Ethan Hurd. I'm a co-founder and co-artistic director of Heartbeat Opera, and I wanted to compliment Peter on his beautiful shirt.
Yours as well.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Newman. I'm the producing director of Heartbeat Opera, and I guess I'm a freelance producer also in theater and live arts.
I am Jacob Ashworth, as you've met Dan and me before, but we are the co-music directors. And I also run the ensemble Cantata Profana, which is sort of our resident ensemble for Heartbeat. And
Dan Schlossberg, the other co-music director, and I also am a pianist and composer.
Great, thank you guys. I'm just going to throw this out for whoever wants to answer it first, but how did this all come about? Not just Heartbeat Opera, but your initial interest in opera and in music and the passion around it, and how did it blossom into the formation of Heartbeat Opera?
Well, we're all performers, or were originally. Louisa, Jacob, and I actually sang as kids in opera productions. I was in DC, Louisa in Berlin, Jacob in New York. Jacob was the star of New York City Opera as a boy soprano. So our opera roots are deep, and we met at Yale. Louisa and I were in a drama school class called Opera Practicum, where we worked with singers in the Yale Opera program for about 8 weeks. And it was this really delicious workshop setting where we got to tackle classic scenes in fresh and sort of edgy ways. And we wanted to bring that kind of exploration to New York.
Yeah, and you know, when you go to the Met, which is a beautiful and unique experience, you're often, you know, a football field away from the singers. And so what we experienced in this class at Yale was if you're 4 feet, 10 feet, 2 feet away from the singer, there's a different experience of opera that you can have where you kind of start to feel the vibrations of these amazing voices on your skin and in your bones, and it really does something physical to you beyond the sort of intellectual appreciation of opera that we thought we could bring to New York. That's something unique that you could never have at the Met.
And Jen, I know you joined the core group a little bit after. Will you just tell us a little bit about how that happened?
Sure. So Heartbeat was formed, I think, about a year before I joined on, and they had had their first time out with an audience and creating for the first time and realized, oh, this is something we want to keep doing. We want more of this. And at that point, they were looking for someone who could sort of be more of a big picture person to help usher along their work as it moved forward. And I was just coming back from managing a larger company, but in China for about 1.5 years, and was looking to get my hands back in once I landed back in New York. And so I watched a little bit of their work and was really excited by the sort of viscerality of the work, the intimacy of the work, and also that it wasn't, that didn't feel staid, that it felt fresh. And so that really attracted me. And so I said, absolutely, I would like to join you guys. So as a producer, I think I look at work, I come from a dance background, but work in all manners of art. And so I do look for that sort of like energy exchange. And that's one of the things that I really like about Heartbeat.
Show of hands, how many people have been to an opera before?
Oh.
Wow, cultured group. That's great.
Souls.
So, you know, you were talking a little bit about how different this is from like the traditional opera houses. What do you sort of try to preserve that exists in the traditional opera houses, and where are you really trying to change things up?
I guess I'll start. This is our mission. We like to say that we have a healthy balance of both reverence and irreverence. As you saw in some of the photographs, we often take drastic steps to make an opera that has been performed the same way for hundreds of years, something of our own. And for example, 2 years ago, we did Lucia di Lammermoor, and Louisa directed, and we set the whole opera essentially in a sanatorium. And the leading character was a crazy person. There's a famous mad scene in it. And part of what I do is create new orchestrations of the opera. We do not have the privilege of a 80-person orchestra. So I reduce the music. And in this case, I added lots of percussion, toy piano, to create this world of her imagination as she's like kind of descending into her craziness.
And just those arrangements that Dan does are something that I think we found out along the way. Not having an 80-person orchestra is actually one of the things we like most about this company. And it's something that is we started probably trying to sort of approximate that as best we could, and then Dan with this Lucia said, well, what if we do something completely different? And that's kind of become our MO since then, trying to use the means that we have and the resources that we have to do something that a bigger company couldn't do.
I think there's sort of the stereotype of opera being for the elite or the super educated or the rich, and Heartbeat's mission is very much about making it a popular art form again. Like, we love it as this sort of coming together of all performing arts, you know, dance, singing, drama, text. And I like to imagine that high schooler who has never been to an opera before when I'm creating a piece and thinking about, okay, how do we make this story accessible to them and also fun and sexy? And bringing it sort of down off of its pedestal a little bit. So, you know, our drag show, we now do an annual Halloween drag extravaganza, and it's become our kind of calling card. We've done it 2 years at National Sawdust now in Williamsburg, and we like to call it our kind of gateway drug for someone, for an opera virgin who maybe has never felt invited into that experience. And we want it to be not only a costume party and a celebration, but a sort of sneak peek at what our work is all about.
Thanks. We were certainly virgins when we first checked it out. So Heartbeat Opera has been called by Alex Ross from The New Yorker a radical endeavor for taking classic operas and mixing it with unconventional orchestrations and stagings. Tell us about the process you go through to produce a show. How do you go about selecting the show, the talent, the location, the set design, the choreography, the orchestration? How much time does it take, and how much help do you guys have? I know not very much, so.
Well, I'll start, and then maybe somebody else can take over. So throughout the year, it's really the 5 of us with maybe 2 or 3 other people running the company, but then come February, March, when we are gearing up for our festival, which this year is in the first 2 weeks of May, the company sort of grows, and we have over 70 people working with us. So suddenly we become a quite large organization. But it all starts actually in the summer when we go on retreat together and we put all of the pieces that we love on the table, and we sort of start to debate about which one would make a good Heartbeat show. And there's a lot of things to consider, like the cast sizes, whether it makes sense or is exciting to cut this piece down to about 90 minutes, which is how long our shows are.
And typical shows tend to be,
I mean, opera is often
hours
2.5,
right?
3, 4 hours, 5 hours if you're talking Wagner, right? So one of our signatures is that we make the pieces shorter. But we don't just, it's not just a reduction, we actually often rearrange the storylines and sort of tell the story through a new lens that we conceive of so that it feels modern and now and relevant.
And I think when we're choosing our repertoire, you know, we put a huge amount of work all year long into basically 1 drag Halloween extravaganza and 2 full productions of opera. So you have to choose really wisely what you're going to put all of that effort into. And as much as we do love going to, you know, the Met to see sort of whatever's on, there's plenty of operas that wouldn't really take to an adaptation and you can't really make them relevant today, or the libretto is just really poor. And there is that in opera. And so we choose wisely, but it's also about sort of taking these pieces that might have been incredibly exciting in their time and we feel maybe have gotten a little stale, but there's something at the heart of them that we love. We have to come to these pieces out of love, or else we would never be able to put this much work into them. And then try to create something over the course of the season, over the course of the year, in a long germination process.
More and more, I'm realizing that being a leader of an arts organization is all about team building, and it's about choosing great people and helping them do their best work. So, you know, the next step in the process is, once the shows have been selected, is saying, okay, who's going to design the set? Who's doing the lighting? Who are we casting? And what's been really beautiful about Heartbeat's growth is that we have collaborators that we return to again and again. So we have 10 core associate artists now. We have designers that have worked on pretty much every piece we've done. We've had singers who've come back again and again. So that team and that community allows us to work more quickly and more deeply, just out of trust and out of love.
You know, one of the challenges, I mean, all of us are also freelance artists in New York, is that your life can become very segmented. Like you work for 3 weeks here, you work at this regional theater for 4 weeks there, you go and do a show on the West Coast for a month, you know. So, and it's always with different teams, with different casts, with different artistic directors. So it's a pretty, like in theater, you get very intense very quickly in the room because it's very personal work. And then after 4 weeks, it's over and you maybe never see the people again. So building a company for us is really to find that continuity that's so important in making art, and having a history with your collaborators is, you know, and when you're doing the 5th, 6th, 7th project together, you just get to a different plane.
I think there's similarities and parallels. Clearly, we're doing different work here at Google, but I think having trust in a team and, you know, collaborating and working on different aspects of it so that we all come together is very similar. So, you know, it's just pointing that out because I think it's interesting that we do something so very different than you, but there's still a lot of core, you know, similarities and paradigms that we both share. When it comes to the work, what's the most rewarding and what's the most challenging aspects of this?
Who wants to take that? We're going to be really superficial on this answer. No, just kidding. I think that rewarding is for me always about the work being put on stage and audiences getting to see it. I mean, that's the exchange, right? And I think in the last couple of years we've developed a program where every performance we offer 10 free seats to students in the New York area who have never seen opera before. And so one of the biggest rewards to us last year was that we had almost 100 students at some point throughout the season get to see opera, and then they were interviewed afterward. And to hear their words after, to say that, oh, I got it. I thought I was going to walk in here and not get it or not feel anything. And then they were able to sort of recount their experience through the opera. And that was, so for us, like, yes, we're doing something right. That's exactly what we wanted to do. So that was super rewarding for us. And personally, the challenge is always time. And I think you guys can probably relate to that. There's just never enough time. Yeah, like we certainly are operating in a space of like non-human hours, I think, at a certain point. And we're just like, there's more than 24 hours in a day, right? Yeah. I don't know, that's for me.
I just want to, we'll probably get to this in a second, but on the reward side, which is much easier to talk about, just the reach that opera can have. It's so easy to just be caught up in your insular New York arts, especially in the arts community. But Ethan and I just went on a trip to the Midwest. In our production of Fidelio, which you'll hear an excerpt from in a few minutes, we're collaborating with 6 prison choirs. And we were able to visit 4 of them over the past week. And just to see the love and the humanity that a project like this and singing in general can evoke and can produce in people it really reminds you of the power of this kind of music.
So touching on that, what inspired you to select Don Giovanni and Fidelio for the upcoming spring festivals, and where and when are they taking place? Little plug.
You want to?
Sure. So we chose these for so many reasons, but Fidelio is particularly, as Dana said, we're setting it. I'll let Ethan talk about it a little bit more. He's directing it, but we're setting a very current situation that's very relevant. And the Don Giovanni is one of the richest pieces of music that there is, and we felt like we're here. We're season 4. We're ready to take this on and to try to tackle this piece, which is. Probably has the most complicated sort of texture of characters, and especially sexuality, which is just there's characters in this opera that have become the archetypes that we now refer to, but they originated here. It's the best crucible for all of these different characters, and so those 2 as a pairing sort of made sense to us. They're both sort of similar time. Revolutionary ideas in both of them that seem to be coming back to us now in 2018 and newly relevant.
And when and where?
Oh,
Do you want to
for
say
it.
more about Don Giovanni?
Yeah, I mean, I would say maybe something we haven't really stressed is that Ethan and I our roots are in music because we were both child performers in opera, but we're trained theater directors. We both went to the Yale School of Drama, and we really learned all about directing actors. And so we bring that passion and meticulousness of working with performers to opera, where often singers are treated more like musicians, like they go on stage and they sing, but there's not necessarily that sort of preciseness of the acting vocabulary that you would bring to theater, and we merge those two things. And for me, Mozart is just one of the best writers of character and psychology, and so diving into these 7 people in Don Giovanni is just such a treat as a director because there's so much to draw on.
Just to talk a little bit about Fidelio, it's Beethoven's one opera, and it's about a woman who disguises herself and infiltrates the prison where she believes her husband is wrongfully incarcerated. So I had come across this opera in grad school and was trying to choose something to do in 2018 that really had something powerful to say about our moment. And here we go. I mean, I started immediately imagining, what if it was an American story today? What if we saw a lot of people of color in the cast? What if, this is a Black Lives Matter activist, actually, who has been wrongfully detained. His wife is trying desperately to find him, trying to seek pro bono legal advice, being sort of turned down. And here is this corrupt white warden who's running this prison and trying to silence his opponent. So it also came to mind, here we have this famous prisoners chorus that occurs in the middle of the opera. How are we going to do that? In the past, Heartbeat has sort of avoided choruses. We've kept the casts much more focused and small, but Dan brought up that he knew a prison choir director in Minnesota, and we reached out to her, and Amanda then connected us with, 3 other prison choir directors across the Midwest, and suddenly we had 6 amazing choirs, male, female, and mixed choirs, committed to collaborating with us. So we're capturing audio recordings of them singing a new 4-part arrangement that Dan did. And then we just this past week videoed their rehearsals, and we'll be sort of creating an almost montage music video of the real incarcerated singers to be shown in the middle of the production.
So the when and the where is, if you look on your seats, you have the flyers for the festival. It runs from May 2nd through 13th. There are 6 performances of each opera, and there's actually one day where you can see both operas in one day, which would make you probably one of the very few people in history to have seen Fidelio and Don Giovanni on the same day. So you can brag about that for your whole life. It's very easy to buy tickets online or over the phone.
Fantastic.
And where?
Oh, it's at Baruch Performing Arts Center, which is on 27th and Lexington, so not too far.
Are there any questions from anyone in the room?
There are more postcards for those that don't have them.
Okay. There's a mic right in the back.
My question was around, most operas being in non-English, and where, sorry, still at the start. No? Okay, I don't think it's on. So my question is around just language and the role it plays in kind of as you try to make opera more accessible. How do you kind of approach the language and telling the story and having people kind of, I don't know, are you translating? Are you doing them in English? Are you doing them in Italian? Depending on kind of the language that it was written in. How do you approach language and making that a part of, for English speaking people, have that be part of, just feeling that opera and being a part of it?
we're not super dogmatic about that. So sometimes when we feel it's right, we translate the text. So when we did Daphnis and Chloe 3 years ago, which is an Offenbach operetta, and it's very populist, sort of almost borderline musical, we felt like people just have to understand immediately where the jokes land and where the punchlines are. So we translated it into English. There are other operas like Puccini and Bizet, where the sound of the words is really important to the way the music is structured. So it becomes a little more difficult to translate. So then we often do super titles. But in the case of Fidelio or Carmen, for example, where it's a mixed opera with music and dialogues, we always translate the dialogues. Maybe you want to speak more about that.
Yeah, and this production of Fidelio is the first time we hired a playwright to really reimagine the dialogues. So some of in adapting the story, we've actually taken the liberty of just reconceiving what a dialogue needs to accomplish, and making that a really contemporary American sound.
I would also say it's a great question and something that we do think about a lot, especially when we do our drag shows, which there's so much more going on in the design that it's a little bit harder to imagine somebody looking up at subtitles anytime there's somebody in a fabulous dress that's just entered and started singing. And so we try there to either use as much English as possible or pick things where we feel like we can make a design and direction around it such that you don't need a translation, you know exactly what they're doing, and we can somehow show it to you in a different way. But we are, in general, trying to make opera more closer to the sort of populist roots that it has, and its opera has, over the centuries, gone back and forth between being a little more popular and a little more aristocratic, and a little more popular, and you notice popular is the top of the crest for me. But I'll go ahead and say here at Talks at Google that my prediction is that in about 50 years, we're back to translating everything and putting everything in the vernacular, and we're singing everything in English the way that people did only 70, 80 years ago, when people wanted populist opera but didn't have subtitles yet, didn't have the technology. There was that period where that happened. And so we're always talking about it.
Great. So before we start losing people, there are 2 more performances, so we want to save some time for that. Are there any other questions? There's one more question.
Super quick one. So I remember back in high school directing a 1-act play and sending in my $50 to Samuel French for the royalties. And so I'm thinking, for a small, are royalties a thing in opera? And do they prevent you from doing things that you want to do as a very small company?
Well, almost everything we do is beyond royalties, so it's in the public domain, which is part of the great joy of then being able to cut it up and use it however you want.
But it does restrict us from doing anything that was written 10 years ago or 20 years ago without very explicit permission, because the thing that we would struggle with the most is if we said, to John Adams or somebody, we'd like to do your opera, but we'd like to do it for 6 clarinets. Are you okay with that? And most likely no. Although, actually, he might. But if you do things that are, over 75 or 90 years old, depending on the country, you get out of most of that trouble. But it is a consideration, yes.
Thanks. So before we jump into the performances, I just want to thank you for taking the time to come. You guys are doing cutting-edge, really cultural, unique things in society and in New York specifically, and I just hope that this helped build that fan base. So thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
So we'll head off. While we're setting up for the performances, we're going to have another video of their of the Spring Festival. So will you introduce what it is?
Oh, it's going to be
medley?
Butterfly and Carmen, which were our last spring productions a year ago. Yes.
Fantastic. Thank you.
C'est lui qu'on vient de
So now you're going to hear two more selections from our upcoming Spring Festival, actually. First an aria from Don Giovanni, and then an aria from Fidelio. So this aria from Don Giovanni, it's the character Zerlina, who's a expert with men, and she just came back from sort of trying to seduce this very, very beautiful nobleman called Don Giovanni, and being interrupted in it. And so now she's back with her husband, who is just furious that he left her on their wedding day to go with this other man. So she is sort of dealing with his anger by saying, "Go ahead, beat me up if you want to. You can scratch my eyes, you can tear my hair, but afterwards, we'll make peace again." So.
Ma se colpa io non ho, ma se da lui ingannato rimasi, e poi che temi, tranquilla te mia vita, non mi toccò la punta di verità. Non me lo credi? Ingrato, vien qui, sfogati, ammazzami, fa tutto di me quel che ti piace. Ma poi, masetto mio, ma poi fa pace. Batti, batti, oh bel masetto, la tua povera Zerlina, starò qui come agnellina, le tue botte ad aspettar. Batti, batti, la tua Zerlina, starò qui, le tue botte ad aspettar. Lascerò straziarmi il crine, lascerò cavarmi gli occhi e le capre tue mani, nel lieto poi saprò baciar, saprò baciar, baciar, saprò baciar. Batti, batti, oh bel masetto, la tua povera Zerlina, starò qui come agnellina, le tue botte ad aspettar. Oh bel masetto, batti, batti, starò qui, le tue botte ad aspettar. Ah, lo vedo, non hai cuore, ah, non hai cuore, ah, lo vedo, non hai cuore. Pace, pace, oh vita mia, pace, pace, oh vita mia, incontenti e d'allegria, no te ne vogliam passar, no te ne vogliam passar, no te ne vogliam passar, no te ne vogliam passar. Pace, pace, oh vita mia, pace, pace, oh vita mia, incontenti e d'allegria, no te ne vogliam passar. Sì, 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 no te ne vogliam passar. Sì, 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 no te ne vogliam passar. Vogliam passar, vogliam passar.
Our next and final selection is from Fidelio. So Leah has just overheard the corrupt warden making plans to murder her husband, who is being wrongfully kept in solitary confinement. So she starts with an explosion of rage. She goes to a very despairing place, and then by the end of the aria, she's finding strength and hope again that she will be able to save him. Kelly Griffin.
Wo eilst du hin? Was hast du vor? Was hast du vor in wildem Grimme? Des Mitleids Ruf, der Menschheit Stimme, red nicht mehr deinen Tigersinn. Doch toben auch die Meereswogen, dir in der Seele Zoll und Wut. So leuchtet mir ein Farbenbogen, hell auf dunkeln Wolken ruht. Der blickt so still, so friedlich nieder, der spiegelt alte Zeiten wieder und neu besänftigt Wald mein Blut. Komm, Hoffnung, lass den letzten Stern, der müde nicht erbleichen. Oh, komm, erhell mein Ziel, sei's noch so fern, so fern. Die Liebe, sie wird zerreichen, ja, ja, sie wird zerreichen, sie wird zerreichen, erreichen. Komm, oh, komm, komm, oh, Hoffnung. Lass den letzten Stern, der müde nicht erbleichen, folgte meinen Triebe, ich wanke nicht, mich stärkt die Blätter treuen Atemliebe, ich wanke nicht, nein, ich wanke nicht, mich stärkt die Blätter treuen Gartenliebe. Oh, du, für den ich alles trug, könnte zur Stelle dringen, wo Bosheit dich in Bissen schlug. Und süßen Trost dir bringen. Oh, du, für den ich alles trug, könnte zur Stelle dringen, wo Bosheit dich in Fesseln schlug, könnte ich zur Stelle dringen. Ich folgte meinen Triebe, ich wanke nicht, mich stärkt die Blätter treuen Atemliebe, ich folgte meinen Triebe, ich wanke